You're late.
I tried as best I could. I apologize. Sorry about that. We have 3 more to go today, so we'll stick over. You're welcome to join us at the additional ones we're doing today. So I think we're waiting for the microphone to get turned on, and we'll go from there. Appreciate everybody coming out today. Well, we got a crowd outside too, so they want to have to go out to the speakers. What do you got working?
Have it at the high school.
Yeah, about that overflow. Did it come on what? It's coming out. We understand that you're supposed to go to the gym and decline that. The gym was available. And your staff decided not to correct.
Appreciate that. I'll have to talk to you.
Should.
Okay.
Folks, I apologize for the technical difficulty. You just give us a moment. I can promise you we will give you the full hour. Just give us a moment.
We can hear him now.
Okay.
Yeah, but we want the folks outside to be able to hear us.
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we, you keep working on the microphone issue,
Go ahead and get started.
and then we'll get started. And as we always start every town hall that we do, I'm looking for a flag.
Right there.
There it is. Why don't we all stand and say the flag?
I will shout indivisible.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah, not just the red.
Okay, I appreciate that. All right, so why don't we do this? Usually we give an update from Washington on when we do our town hall.
We don't need that.
Right
We've got
to it.
that.
Okay, it's okay. So we're going to get right to it, okay? So why don't we look at what kind of questions we have? I would assume we have kind of similar questions on a lot of similar topics, so we'll try to cover as many of those as possible.
Yes. Folks, I'm Allison. I'm Tom's district director. I know that there's a number of folks outside. We are working to find our tech guy, Tom Highland. If you see him, send him in. He's working on the microphone. I am going to be facilitating and trying to get through as many questions as possible today. So please bear with us, but momentarily we should have the microphone working so all the folks outside can hear as well. The number 1 topic today is climate and the Paris Climate Agreement.
Okay.
Lisa from Ithaca wants to talk about how what your feelings are, and as a Catholic as well.
Okay, that's why we're working on the microphone, but we jumped right into it. The microphone's having a little hiccup, but we'll get through it, and we'll see what we can do about it as soon as we can. So again, thank you everybody for coming out. A lot of topics, questions, it appears, on the Paris Agreement and where we stand on climate change and the issues associated with it. So one, just so everyone knows where I stand on climate change. I do believe in climate change. I believe it is a priority that needs to be addressed, and we're working on So we're in the Climate Change Caucus. We signed on to the Climate Change Resolution, and we're supporting that as an issue to be addressed going forward. Now, obviously, with the Paris Agreement, the President has made a decision, and the decision is to have us withdraw of that agreement. And though I respect the President's decision on it because it is one of the things I hope we can agree is that we need to do better. We need to go forward and see what we can do to see if we can improve upon the situation we find ourselves in today. And so my hope is to be part of the voice on our side of the aisle that supports this issue being addressed, that we will return to Washington. I will carry your voice to Washington and make sure that they know where we stand on the issue.
I think we have the microphone working, so we're going to give this over to Tom. Folks outside here, so we're sending a staff member out. If you can't hear, let us know.
What concretely do you care?
So the issue on Paris right now is my hope. We can learn some things from that agreement, and that we can learn from how we got into that agreement. Because one of the things that I think is problematic with that agreement was that the President unilaterally had us enter into that agreement. Rather than
Because the Republicans wouldn't go along with it. It has to be originated.
appreciate that. And that is where it is a harder process, obviously, to either have that legislatively done or ratified by the Senate. So my hope is the next time we have an opportunity to enter into that type of an agreement that is a non-negotiated
So we're all doing
agreement
that.
Good luck with
where the
that.
Senate and the House can participate in that process, as well as the American people. Because as I've gone across the district, there is a lot of misinformation on the Paris Agreement. There is a lot of issues in the Paris Agreement. Okay, I appreciate that.
Fox News.
Appreciate that, appreciate that. So the misinformation, I think, demonstrates another thing we can learn from in regards to the Paris Agreement. The more we engage the American people, the more that we engage the interior of America, as well as the coastlines of America, as well as the north and south borders of America, the stronger we will be in a position to deal with this issue going forward. So we appreciate
The
that.
western part of the state. How
Let
can
him
we
talk.
help you do that?
Okay, I think by being here today, by having the press here today, by having access to the social media that we do today, I think that is very helpful. And we'll continue to push it.
Where it's bigger and everybody could be in
Okay, so a question about the high school and the logistics of the meeting. I will talk to the people over here that work for us, and
Let's talk to
it's a
them now.
legitimate concern. Okay, let's all be respectful. Let's all be respectful. So a decision was made to have it here at the fire department. And I understand the logistical issues and obviously the microphone and the folks that are outside. That is why we put the speakers out there. And what we're going to do is make sure that we engage as many folks outside as we are in here. So we have definitely, well, this was a question that was raised, so we're trying to address the question that was raised. And so we appreciate the input, we appreciate the turnout, and we'll try to figure out logistics that we can approve on
What do you
going
want to
forward.
do about climate
We
change?
have a lot of questions out here.
Okay.
Let them answer them.
Sir, Susan from Hector also wants to know what you're doing to protect our environment, so similar to your question.
Okay. So what I have specifically done is I've joined the Climate Change Caucus. I'm one of the ones on the Republican side that signed on to the climate change resolution. I also have supported an all of the above energy policy that includes a strong commitment to alternatives and renewables.
You're on
I
the
have
Natural Gas
become,
Caucus too.
yeah, because I do support an all of the above energy policy, which does include the
And you're
development
for
of
gas
natural
storage
gas.
at Seneca
And I
Lake.
am for developing all sources of energy. I also serve on the tax writing committee. The tax committee writing in DC is where I serve, and we have been a strong proponent and author of legislation dealing with the tax credits that have made solar and wind a viable commercial entity as they go through the phase down that we negotiated in order to get them into a self-sustaining mode. From our perspective, and we have also,
Reduce greenhouse gas.
so we have also authored, I'm glad you brought up geothermal, we have also authored an expansion of those tax credits beyond solar and wind. We are ones that are trying to open it up to all alternatives and renewables, working with our partners in the Senate, working with our partners in the House. I'm hopeful as we do tax reform that our language will win the day. Our language will be inclusive of all alternatives and all renewables and have an innovative approach to that endless supply of energy that I think we all want to get to at some point in time.
About subsidies on fossil fuels.
Appreciate that.
Where do we see that?
Okay.
We wrote them
And that's what we're trying to do.
down.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I have this.
So we have a good conversation back and forth. Is it on topic? I don't want
It
to.
is on topic.
Okay,
It's on
good.
topic of climate, and it's also on the topic of procedure, because I feel like it would be great for us to have the opportunity to talk a little bit and to actually verbalize our questions. I appreciate the moderators, but could I just ask my question? It is still related to the.
Why don't you
climate
come on up so you
And
can
that's why
talk
we
to
try
the
to
mic?
have the exchange and the conversation
No,
back
I
and forth.
really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Congressman Reed, again, this is, I know a lot of people agree with this. 70% of Americans believe climate change should be a national priority and supported our being part of Paris. Google, Walmart, Apple, Amazon all have committed to 100% renewable energy in the coming years. Clean air and water has generally been a bipartisan issue. And you did say last March, just 2 months ago, you supported the Republican-backed legislation, the climate bill, which I do appreciate. I have a 2-month-old daughter, her name's Audrey, and I'm terrified about Trump's reckless decisions to pull us out of Paris and to pull back on bipartisan supported issues on the environment. This is serious stuff, and I think you agree or you wouldn't have been part of that legislation. These decisions really do nothing to create jobs, and they're setting us back. How can you support and respect Trump's decision to pull out of Paris and an agreement that every other nation but Syria and Nicaragua have signed on to?
Yay!
Well said. And as we had indicated, because the president has that authority, and President Obama entered into this agreement unilaterally, this president has the authority to unilaterally withdraw from this agreement. That's where the respect comes from. But where you and I agree, is that climate change is something that I do want to make a priority, and is something that we want to address in our term as a representative of the district. That's why we've signed on to the resolution. That is why we signed on to the caucus to be a part of that as we go forward. But I will tell you that I do support all of the above. I'm very clear in our positions, and I understand the disagreement.
Can't be for climate
for me.
and
So,
be all of the above.
so some folks want to have us go to, alternatives and renewables tomorrow.
Yes.
And I understand that. I understand that concern. But I don't think that's a feasible, practical position for us to be in as a nation, where you turn off a fossil fuel economy in one day. So what we need to agree on, what we need to try to work on, is what is that map? What is that time frame for us to move to that level? Appreciate it. Okay.
Sir, I don't understand how you can allow our country to be attached with two other dictator countries. I mean, there's three countries against this, and the United States is against it when we have Nicaragua, which has a dictator, and Syria, which is killing all of its people no matter what. Why do we want to be aligned with that?
Exactly.
What's happened to the image of our
Disagree with him publicly on this,
Fair point. So it's a fair point, and obviously we have to move forward, and that is where we're going to be a voice to join with you to make sure that we are addressing this in a proactive way. I'm sorry? Everyone's telling me.
daughter told him he was wrong. Who's he going to listen to?
Okay. I understand. That's why, by entering this agreement unilaterally, President Obama has created this. My hope is the more that you get public, it's okay. I'm just talking the facts here. President Obama was the one who unilaterally entered us into this agreement. My hope is that we can become united on this issue, and I also see a lot of common ground on this issue that was articulated. That generally, clean air, clean water, I've yet to meet a member of Congress on either side of the aisle that doesn't support that position. And so what we need to do is harness that together and see where that common ground is.
For H.R. 953, which prohibits a state or administrator of the EPA from requiring a permit for discharge of pesticides from a single identical source. You voted for that.
That expansive regulation that was much more than what you just articulated. That regulation was an overreach in my opinion by the EPA, and we have always been supportive of a reasonable regulatory oversight when it comes to these issues. So that is not completely an accurate position of that legislation.
Congressman Reed.
Yes, please.
So if you
It's always Tom.
are committed to this issue, if you are committed to being part of the climate change caucus, if, as you say, you are committed to standing up for efforts to fight the worst effects of climate change, if that is what you're saying to your constituents, will you publicly commit that in the upcoming spending negotiations, you will vote no on EPA cuts, vote no on cuts to Department of Energy programs for renewable energy, vote to preserve tax credits for renewable energy. You have a chance to vote to actually stand by these commitments. Will you publicly commit to your constituents to do that?
Okay. So the question you're advocating for me to do is to shut the government down. Until your position is 100%. Because voting no is to shut the government down. That's what you're advocating for, just so we know what that vote represents. Now, what we are going to do in the process, is we'll be a voice to make sure that that priority of those items that you identified are part of that issue.
There's no time alone.
Okay? And what I have to do, I understand the anger.
No, you don't.
I do. I understand you're very passionate about it. And we don't agree on every issue in this room. And obviously I disagree with you on many of this issue. No, we disagree on many of the issues that we are talking about here today. So I appreciate that. We represent 717,000. There's a process for that, and I respect that process. And what we're trying to do is represent all 717,000 folks that we represent. So when it comes to the prioritization and the funding bill, this is where we will make sure the voice is heard, and I appreciate the input, and we will offer our voice to that effort. Ma'am.
I've been to a number of your town halls, and I've certainly seen you on MSNBC, and I understand that you are part of a problem-solving caucus. What I don't understand is why you would take the dramatic position that voting for what that gentleman has asked for would cause a government shutdown. Isn't that part of what the problem-solving caucus should be addressing right now? Is how do we move the government forward to respond to all of the elements of your constituency?
That's exactly what I'm trying to do, ma'am. That's exactly what I'm trying to do through the problem-solving caucus, through our voices. But what we need on
You're going to shut the government down.
because what you're articulating is a vote on the whole bill. The whole bill is put together. And the vote that you're talking about is one vote on all lines of the federal budget that have multiple priorities that people advocate for across the issue. And if that issue, according to this gentleman, is advocating, if I'm hearing him correctly, is that if that priority is not fully addressed in that bill to vote no. That is a no vote to shut the government down because you're shutting down the entire spending bill. So the issue that we're trying to do with the Problem Solvers Caucus is to raise these issues and also to figure out a way to get to yes, so that we can have a reasonable approach to these issues.
But the
Now, there's
budget is the Congress's responsibility.
Sure.
It's not the president's. So what is the Congress doing right now to move those issues forward in the professional process?
We're going through the debate. We're going through that process as we speak, and that is where we engage in the process openly and actively. All right. Where's that at? Which one is that? It's your house. Which one is it? Nationals Park? All right, good. It's your house.
Mr. Reed, I just have one question. Does Donald Trump scare you?
And obviously a lot of fear based in that question, and I understand that fear. But I will say to you that no, I do not, because what I believe in is the American people. What I believe in is the democratic process and our Constitution. And when we talk about the President of the United States, they are all one of a separate branch of government that keeps each other in check. So the concern and fear that the young man articulates, and I'm looking the young man right in the eye, is that no. I trust our Constitution, and I trust our process, and I trust this. I trust this. If I didn't trust this or care about this, I would not be showing up to engage in these conversations because I believe in democracy as we go forward. Thank you. We're trying to answer the question. I appreciate that. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And I just want to say that it's terrifying for us to see what's happening with healthcare. He's got a disability, his brother's epileptic, I need the environment, education. I need our public schools to be fabulous, not led by somebody who doesn't believe in The hate that's been engendered by this administration is terrifying to young people, especially young people of color. And so there's not much I can be proud of right now in this country and this administration. extremely hard to explain to him how it is gonna be okay. And so I don't know what answer you have to that, but I just want to put out, I know that it's difficult to hear this, but it's because we're terrified and nobody's listening. When people don't listen, we shout.
So the question and the input that was raised by the young man's mother was the issues that the president has entered in upon, and the rhetoric that's coming out of Washington is very concerning to her and to her children on issues of healthcare, education, a whole slew of issues that were identified there. And what I can offer you is this, is that there are a lot of good people in Washington, D.C., across this country, that are engaging in the process, and that will carry us through this. Our country has been through many divisions over its history, and I understand the concern that many folks have on your side or your positions where you have a belief in government, and the government is the one that primarily takes care of these issues. I generally have a different philosophy. I subscribe to a different philosophy. Obviously, I believe in individuals. I believe in empowering folks, not the government. And so, I appreciate that. And so what we have to do, when we have people like myself who have a different philosophy that I bring to this job and to this position, to your philosophy and to your position on folks who disagree with us, is I will continue to try to be part of those efforts to bridge those differences. And so that's why we're here today, and that is why we're engaging with Townhall. So, why don't we give it, Elson?
I have a follow-up question about
Okay, on healthcare. Okay, so we're going to go to healthcare. Okay, go ahead. We'll give that. We're going to open up healthcare. Okay, thank you. Thank you. I was going to. Okay. There you go.
I'll give you this.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me speak.
What's your name?
Kelly. My name's Kelly. I live across the street. I've been here for 10 years.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. Kelly.
Kelly.
I apologize if I get emotional. It's really very important to me. I'm the mother of 3 boys. 2 of my children get intensive special education.
What's their name?
Christian and Kissing.
Okay.
I adopted them. They're both on Medicaid. One of them has a disability. He has autism. And during the time that I've had them in my home, both of them have been recommended to go to residential facilities. Thanks to the support that we get from Trumansburg School, we've not had to do that. Thank you. I understand that the special education that they get at Trumansburg School is very expensive, but it is not as expensive as residential care. It is not as expensive as incarceration, and it is not as expensive as homelessness. Okay, my children need to have special education services, and the Health Care Act is going to change that. It's going to not reimburse the cost that it costs the schools to pay for my son's one-to-one aid.
And where do you get that from?
Medicaid. My children get Medicaid
Are
because
you in the expansion population, or are you in?
my children are adopted, so they through foster care, so they get Medicaid. Okay, and what I want to know is if you will promise to protect Medicaid, including reimbursement for special ed services. The problem is my children don't have a backup plan. These are the least among us. Okay, they need the support.
I appreciate that. And so, to your 2 young boys, or to your 3 young boys that you have adopted and that you have, we have committed to supporting Medicaid, and I have voted to support Medicaid. The health care bill that you reference continues to support Medicaid. And what it does, just so we're clear, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And if you look at the bill, what we were doing is we were recognizing that Medicaid right now, with the percentage split and the fee for service type of reimbursement models that generally Medicaid operates off of, is generating an unsustainable path for Medicaid.
Not true.
Taxpayers cannot afford, and we see it here in New York. When I look at New York and I look at the tax bill that New Yorkers pay, they cannot afford to continue the status quo. So what we're looking to do, Yes.
health care.
And so what, yes, absolutely, and that's why having Medicaid is something we support, and it is continued in this health care bill that we voted for. And so what we're talking about, and if you have a better way, and that's why we also do the town halls, to have input. If you have a better way to have Medicaid in a sustainable position, where we have incentives in order to cut costs, in order to make it more efficient and spread more dollars to children like yourself, that to me is what we're trying to advocate for, to fix the problem of an unsustainable Medicaid healthcare system across America.
What will end up being unsustainable is when children like my children don't get the support that they need early. We will save money because
And they will be like my son who's 35, who wants to be independent. And the only way you're going to be independent is if Medicaid continues as it is. It helps them to have services at home. It helps them to have community services. We don't want a Willowbrook anymore. That was back in the 60s. They got rid of institutions. We want them in the community. We want them living in the community. If you take away Medicaid, they're not going to have, if you make these drastic cuts that this budget wants, not that, you know, the bill wants, the budget. The budget talked about cutting Medicaid. If you cut the Medicaid, you're helping these people to be on the street, to not have any help. About a year ago, I had a problem, and it was the help that he got that allowed him to survive. Well, I was in the hospital for 5 weeks. If he didn't have that help, where the heck would he be today?
And there's where common ground is. You and I share common ground here.
We do.
We do. We do. So no. We are going to support that Medicaid remains in existence, but we are going to be part of solving the problem of Medicaid on its unsustainable. It's unsustainable. It's not in a position. Talk to taxpayers across New York. Talk to New York taxpayers when they talk about their property tax bill. We have people leaving New York in droves, especially from upstate New York and western New York. And a lot of it has to do with the tax burden that is coming out of Albany. And part of that levy is the property tax levy. I understand. The other issue that we have, the other issue we have in Medicaid right now is because it's a percentage split. I don't know how that mechanism puts pressure on the county or the state capital to contain the cost and make it more efficient. They're actually incentivized to do more. They're incentivized to expand the programs, and we've seen a lot of issues that have been raised because of that percentage split. So that what we need to do is figure out a way to I would hope we could find common ground to fix the issue of Medicaid. That's what we're trying to do. And in the meantime,
Can we give you suggestions?
and in the meantime, what we do is we make sure that the backstop of Medicaid, so the services like your sons, the services to like your son, are there as we do this reform and redesign of Medicaid nationally. And that's what we're looking to do.
Why do you want to give tax benefits to the rest?
All right, we're going to do our best to make sure we're repeating the questions or getting the microphone to the person asking, because I know the folks outside can't hear the questions, so if we could do that. And we do have more questions on healthcare. Jamie from the city of Ithaca wants to know why you voted on the healthcare bill before the CBO score, and then wants your, to know what you think of the CBO score.
Fair criticism, and I accept that criticism, and I did express some concern about taking that final vote without the final score before us. Now, that decision obviously was not respected by us, but it was not respected by the leadership that decided to go forward without that score. Now, but the issue that I had is I had a base score before me. The CBO did the base score of the base test. And the amendments that occurred, obviously, I was a voice. I raised my hand and said we should wait till we get the final score. But that voice didn't go out. And so we still had to take a vote on the issue before us. And as we read the text, as we read the bill, as we had the base score, and the changes that the amendments represented, knowing how the scoring system works out of Washington, D.C., I was comfortable having enough information to make the vote the way we did. Let's watch the language. Let's watch the language.
But you would vote
differently
if you had the CBO score now.
No, because the score came back consistent with what I thought it would come back with.
23 million, everybody.
And that is an issue. And I've expressed concern about the 23 million folks that are potentially going to lose health insurance. But just so we're clear how this score works, the 23 million is reflective of going from a mandate to a freer healthcare system where you have a choice. That choice is supposed to be mandated to go. So what we are looking for, and hopefully the Senate will do what we need to do in order to improve the bill as we go through this process. And so we moved it along the process because, back to the point of Medicaid, back to the point of healthcare, I can tell you that I am aware of issues in the marketplace exchanges. I am aware of premium notices that are going to be going out that are going to have significant increases when it comes to Blue Cross Blue Shield, 30, 40, 50% premium increases. We are seeing that across the board of the country. So the status quo of the Affordable Care Act is not going to be able to be sustained. That's where the Senate,
Increase the subsidy.
that's where the Senate, I think their position, many of them are saying we're not going to do anything, we're not going to address any of the issues. That's not sustainable because these issues are real. And I have heard from so many folks, even that, and this is where common ground is, where they said, the Affordable Care Act, you need to fix it. You need to fix it. Not one person has come to me and said it is a perfect bill. And so the issue that I have then, as I say to folks,
Because it was just a bipartisan way.
where if we stand for repeal and replace, okay? Let's put the repeal side of the conversation aside. Where can we have a conversation about fix or repeal? And I'm definitely open to ideas. So we get the Medicaid single payer, just so we're clear, and I want to be very clear, I do not support single payer. I do not support going down the path of more government in regards to our health care. I go down the path of more power to individuals, to the state government, to the local government. So I appreciate that.
All right, Margot from Hector wants to talk about your position for funding Planned Parenthood. I see a number of Planned Parenthood signs in the room, so I guess we'll touch on that topic.
Well, I appreciate it, and I've obviously seen the signs, and I've heard the voice that people want us to support.
About your mama.
Well, I appreciate that, but that always has an impact, and I would hope you would respect my mother. You don't have to respect me, but I would hope you would respect my mom. That is something that I just hope you would respect me. And to the point, just so very clear, I do not support the funding for Planned Parenthood. I have made my record very clear on it. Disagree on this issue, and with the issue going forward. Yeah, go right ahead. Right up. You're Margot? Oh, that's Margot. Okay. That's your question. Okay.
Hi. This is my question. I have been to several of your town meetings, and you keep referring to the entire constituency in terms of not supporting Planned Parenthood, Medicaid funding, and Title X. I want to make it clear that Planned Parenthood doesn't get any funding. We're not a line item budget. But you keep saying you represent a whole constituency, when I come to your town halls, what I see is Planned Parenthood signs all over the place. There are 20 national polls that show that the majority of people, when they have accurate information, support Planned Parenthood. And if anything, would actually make it a line item budget. So I want to know, and of those polls, one of them was a Fox News poll. So I would like to know where you're getting your figures from. Have you done a statistically accurate poll of your constituency to back your position?
It's his opinion.
So just so we're clear, I don't operate off of polls. I don't operate off of I take positions based on information that we have. principles that we have articulated and that we stand by, and we make sure that our positions and our principles are known to the folks we represent. And that has been consistent through our whole tenure in Congress and will remain the same as we go forward. And so reflecting polls, to me, is not the way to govern. Reflecting polls is in order to take input, as much input as possible, do town halls here. I understand the concerns. So for example, when I get folks that are adamantly opposed to me on the Planned Parenthood issue, I recognize we're going to disagree on that. But when it comes to the health services that Planned Parenthood does, I recognize the need to be part of a solution to that issue. That is why, this week, I was out in Chautauqua County visiting a federally qualified health center, advocating for additional funding for people in those centers to access rural health care, to provide access to those health services that Planned Parenthood does. And we're going to continue to be a strong advocate for those services in those agencies that are there.
Planned Parenthood is the health safety net in 3 of their counties. There is the New York State Health Department, when they need people treated for STDs, comes to Planned Parenthood in your constituents' counties. There is no health safety net other than Planned Parenthood in several of your counties. And the Congressional Budget Office has done studies in terms of what it would cost to actually create these. So what are you going to say to your 10,000 constituents who use and rely on Planned Parenthood, the majority of who have Medicaid or uninsured or have such high deductibles they may as well not have insurance? What do you say to those 10,000 people? Hold on, we're going to open up a whole bunch of new centers, but meanwhile, just, don't worry about that lump in your breast.
Tom, one of your core Republican principles is choice. It's very important, and you mention it in a lot of different areas. Will you and your fellow Republicans provide a full spectrum of choice in healthcare by offering a public option?
Yeah. They're part of the debate. So the issue is expanding healthcare in order to provide for government public option type run healthcare. I do not support the expansion of healthcare into a bigger government situation, government system. I don't believe that is the way to go forward. Based on the fact that mandating what healthcare every man and woman in America gets, to me, is too big of government. That is a lot of government power, and we have, in my opinion, gone too far down that path already. We need to empower individuals, empower doctors, and give real choice to folks in an open, transparent healthcare market, as well as a health insurance market. And a lot of people mix those two together. And when you talk about empowering choice as the primary solution, that is why public option, to me, does not foster a choice environment. That fosters a government-run and government-centered option of
choice. Option means choice.
All right.
Option means
Carol from
choice.
Enfield wanted to talk about her concerns over the HCA increasing premiums for the older folks before they're Medicare eligible, so 50 and 60-year-olds, and what that will mean. That population.
Who is it?
Carol from Enfield.
Carol?
She's inside our outside.
I'm right
but-
here.
Oh,
There she is,
Carol,
right here.
You wanna,
Picture it out
if
in
you
front.
want to expand on that at all?
I'm just very much concerned that the premium for, say, and this is a fictional person, a 63-year-old woman who makes $50,000 a year, who is working and currently pays $1,000 a month, or $1,000, yeah, $1,000 a month, or about, say, $1,200 a year for her health insurance. What is this person going to do when her premiums are doubled and tripled under the AHCA? And it becomes more than she can afford. She will not have enough money to live on.
Wow. So this is definitely an area where we were part of the process, and we expanded in regards to providing access to tax credits to folks to higher amounts in the House bill, and that's where we ended up in the House bill. My hope is the Senate is going to address this even further, is that we're going to change the calculations, especially for older Americans that are in this exact situation, so that the tax credits are a little heavier or higher for those individuals. But also, let's make sure we get into the rating question, which I think is the heart of the question that you ask, and that's how the premiums are assessed. Now, in New York, just so we're all clear and working off the same information, New York has adopted a regulatory standard where that age issue is a 1-to-1 ratio. And so there is no ability in New York for this circumstance to exist.
I'm concerned about the
New York,
whole country.
I understand. I understand the concern. Now, obviously, I represent a district in New York, and so obviously what New York does has an impact in regards to the issues and the positions we take on issues before us in Washington. So knowing that New York is at a 1-to-1 ratio, knowing that New York is highly unlikely to change that regulatory backstop, and nothing in the legislation removes the ability of a state to do that, I'm very confident in telling folks and to taking the public position that the scenario you articulate in New York, in our district, of the people we represent, will not occur. And that is how I see it going forward. The concern about going across the state, across the country, legitimate concern, and that is something we take into consideration also. But when we look at the legislation that we adopted and that we supported and that we read before we actually voted on it, you look at what this scenario requires. This scenario requires multiple waivers and approvals of those waivers at the federal level. And so from a theoretical point of view, being a states' rights guy who defers to the state whenever possible, I like the idea that the state can show that it can have an ability to do better for healthcare for its population, that it at least has an opportunity to make that argument in order to innovate and create a system that they think can improve upon healthcare. From my perspective, that opens the door to an innovative, dynamic type of healthcare system.
Now that the CBO says.
Oh yeah, you're not.
Excuse me for going back to the Planned Parenthood piece. I called your office earlier this week to find out where you stood on the president's plan to expand the ability for companies to not offer birth control through their insurance programs. And the gentleman I spoke with said that you had not released a statement. And I was just curious if we could get a statement from you now as to if you would support the president's plan to allow companies, regardless of their religious affiliation, and those kinds of exemptions to not offer birth control.
What executive? No, it's okay. What exact executive order or plan are you referring to?
I actually can't. I just remember reading about that President Trump as he was talking about birth control, and it was around the Hobby Lobby type case, and saying about the religious liberties and expanding it to moral grounds. And so I'm curious as to where you would stand if you're ready to defund Planned Parenthood, how you would allow for people to continue to get birth control through their work insurance.
Okay. Well, and this is a very critical issue when you look at our constitutional freedoms. Now, I personally support more access to birth control, more access to prevention training, more access to... We agree. We found some common ground. Now, the issue that you referenced, okay? So the issue that you reference is the president's concerns that are being raised by multiple sources across the country about what about folks who based on religious freedom, but who disagree with our personal position, who disagree with our position on birth control and access to birth control. So I believe you can have a mechanism in the law as we go through this process that recognizes if you have a duly held religious belief that is protected by the Constitution, because I believe in the Constitution, there has to be a process there to recognize that religious freedom. So when it comes to overall position, I will join with you in order to provide more access to birth control. I've gone as far as to advocate for over-the-counter access to that and doing things along those lines. So, as we go forward, let's see where we can find the common ground. But the religious freedom aspect is something that I would hope people that believe in the Constitution, that believes in our freedoms, and recognize that that needs to be respected at some level.
We have some other topics to be addressed today. I know people want to talk about Russia and Trump. Mary wants to know if you'll support an independent. Is
that Mary Case?
No. Your sister didn't write a question for you today, Tom. She wants to know if you'll support an independent commission to investigate the president.
Okay. So where we are on this, so a lot of questions on Russia and on the investigations and where we are in regards to that. We have always supported letting the evidence and facts drive this process. That is why I supported the House and Senate Intel committees months ago going down this path. Also, the appointment of the special counsel. Again, a step in the right direction. I think that is appropriate. I don't disagree with what the administration did in regards to that. As we go forward, are we at the point of an independent commission? I don't see the evidence. I don't see the evidence to be out there advocating for that over the investigative committees and the special counsel that are doing its job right now. So until that evidence comes out, until that evidence is there, that is where we are on the issue. So the answer to the question is no at this point in time.
We are going to gradually move our way outside to make sure that we can see the folks outside, but we want to start, we're still going, we got more questions. I want to talk about the budget. So Peter wants to know if you support funding. He's got a variety of food stamps, Meals on Wheels, and many services. And actually, he mentions the food bank of the Southern Tier and how 16,000 folks are served. And I want to mention one thing. The food bank of the Southern Tier was just recognized nationally as the food bank of the year across the United States. So we're very glad to have them here.
Thank you very much. Could I see my card?
You sure can, Peter.
Okay. I'm worried about health care budget, the health care bill, the budget, the tax code, all proposals that seem to take services away from the lower 20% of people in our country.
Rugged individualism.
And also, you know, all these services seem to be gradually moving up into the upper 20% of our country. In our district, in your district, or in the Southern Tier anyway, we have 16,000 folks that go to the food bank and use the food bank. There's a tremendous need. Why is there talk about cutting food stamps, cutting Meals on Wheels, which we all know is important, and many services depended on by poor people? Most of the poor people are 16 years old, or 12 years old, or 6 years old, or 2 years old. You know, they're not into rugged individualism just yet. I was on the school board in town for 9 years, and I came to realize that our nurses stuff backpacks of kids that they are concerned might be hungry on Fridays. So over the weekend they have nothing to eat.
Every Friday.
There just doesn't seem to be compassion in our government right now. Where's the compassion?
Peter, well said. So the question you asked and then you articulated even further was, why are we having this conversation? And I will tell you, simply put, $20 trillion number of our national debt. And why are we having a conversation about where this seems to impact folks on the lower end? Because
Get out of the Middle East.
Because a lot of the programs in government are tailored to the least among us, which is correct. That's the right way to go. And so when you talk about dealing with the debt and you talk about spending and getting spending under control, obviously it's going to impact those people upon which the government's framework leans towards. And so what we have to do, in my opinion, and we heard some input here, is what are the priorities? What are the priorities? When you talk about Meals on Wheels, when you talk about food banks, I have supported those, will continue to support those. I have been in the food banks, I have been to Meals on Wheels. They're doing amazing things. Elmira just opened up a new facility over there that we cleared our schedule to go to stand with them as we were going through the budget process to send the message we're with them in regards to that. I authored the food inventory bill at the federal level. that allowed for more food to go to our food banks because of the tax provisions that allowed that to be expanded in order to go to farmers and to make sure that food doesn't get thrown away at restaurants and into landfills. We were the voice and author of that legislation. So as we go through this process of dealing with the national debt, as we go through the process, because it is just not sustainable, of what are the priorities, this is where the input, is, there you go, is you have folks who strongly advocate, don't worry about the spending, just raise taxes on certain individuals at the top, well, that's very good, okay. So one person advocated for keeping it the same. Now, we've had the highest revenues that we've ever had in the federal government over the last 4 to 5 years that are coming in. So we're having a revenue positive situation. So what we got to do is, how do you bridge that $1 trillion, $500 billion each year that we're coming up short? That is the conversation we have. Now, growth, now just so we can maybe find some common ground on this, growth of the economy doesn't deal with spending, and it doesn't deal with increasing taxes. That's why I hope that is a cornerstone of common ground that we can reach in this room, because if we grow the economy, we get more people back to work, it is amazing how you bridge that difference together. So how we try to deal with that is something I'm very interested in.
Voodoo economics.
If I may have everyone's attention, this is not a question. I would like everyone on this room and outside to stand up, turn your back. I want you to stand up, turn around, and turn your back to the front of the room, please. Stand up. I want to show in a symbolic way to Congressman Reed that we are having him turn his back on his constituency.
No. I disagree with everything he says, but I admire him for showing up to these
But as we are all talking, to symbolically do that, to stand up and turn around, you choose not to.
Appreciate it. There you go. And then we'll go to the questions.
My name is Vivian Rose. I live in this area. I'm also a historian and of Irish and Catholic descent. I come from a Catholic background and a conservative Christian background. And when I got out into the world, all that changed. Because I saw that my brother and my neighbor needed more from me than my belief. They needed my hand. They needed me to be someone who noticed my enemy in a ditch and helped them. So my concern as a historian and as a person of Irish descent is that the methods that are being used by this country now are not intended for the young and the life systems that support them. And I say this as a person of Irish descent because in the Irish famine, a quarter of the people died or came to this country or to Canada or to Australia because the federal government decided that the local people would take care of all the poor. The local people would do that. So my question to you is there not a responsibility beyond what the local people can handle? That is a federal responsibility. And where exactly do you think that is? Because at the end of the day, we're going to be counted by who we helped out of the ditch, not who we gave more money to so they could have more money for our jobs.
I appreciate that. And the philosophy you articulated is a core philosophy of mine. And what that is where government, life always throws people curveballs. And people don't want to hear about my mom, people don't want to hear about my family, but it impacts me each and every day. You know, my mom was a single mom raising 12 kids. Father passed when I was two. So there are things that happen. What my mom taught me was there are going to be times. I stood with her at the fire department in Corinth to give food, excess cheese. Remember when they handed it out?
Yes.
And they did that? I was there. And so what she said is there are going to be times where this occurs. But what we want to do what we want everyone to do, and for her to tell me, I want you to get an education. I promised your father that all 12 of you would get an education.
Why
empowering you
Social
to get
Security
an
pays for you then?
and Social Security. And so having that background, so that when you get knocked to your knees, there's something there on top of your neighbor, on top of your local community, on top of your church, on top of the other services that are there. There is a federal component that provides that safety net. I support that. I support that. And where we talk about it, though, becoming a system of dependency, of a system that doesn't stand with people, a system that doesn't stand with people, that as they return to work, the message that the government sends right now, we're all familiar with the welfare cliff and things like that, is the more you work, the more you lose. And I have heard that from folks across the district. They have gone into public assistance offices and said, you know what, they told me my husband had to stop working in order to get LIHEAP. That doesn't make sense to me. So what we need to do is work on common ground, where maybe there's a sharing, there's a glide path. That's why we're doing so much work on the anti-poverty initiatives. Jimmy Kemp, Jack Kemp's son, Bob Woodson and myself, we are working on the Republican side to replace our poverty programs in a way that empower people, stand with people as they go back onto their 2 feet. That is my philosophy, that's my
Tom, tell us where your no is. At some point, you have to say, no, this is not right.
So a no would be, a vote to repeal Medicaid. Of course, that is a no position. A vote to repeal food stamps completely. That is a no position. So, where we are talking about is how do you make them sustainable? How do you make them into those areas where you can work with people and reward the work ethic of America and not penalize it from our government program. I hope that answers your question.
Kim has agreed to walk outside with us as we ask this next question, so we can go see the folks outside as well. So we're going to leave all the speakers will remain on, but I want to make sure that we see the folks outside as well. So we're going to go around this way.
This gentleman's walking up here.
Stand up, fella.
Sorry, sir.
My question is, do yourself and the Republican Party a favor. It's simple, it's easy, you can have the votes, implement Medicare for all now. You would get all the Democrat votes, you would get enough honored Republican votes, and get this issue gone. It's easier for you. Medicare for
My question then is, you talked about all these programs that you don't seem to want to put a lot of money towards, or the giving to all the lower people. What would you just would you support a living fair wage so that people could afford to do these things without all of these other social programs?